In another big leap towards making Linux software run natively on Windows 10, Microsoft has brought a full Linux kernel to its operating system. It's the latest and most comprehensive version of WSL, or Windows Subsystem for Linux. Here we explain why this matters and what it means to you. Hi, I'm Phil from Make Tech Easier, and this is Linux Kernel Comes to Windows. What does this mean? Linux is no stranger to Windows. In the past, we've reported how Linux was implemented into Windows 10. Recently, Microsoft has gone to the additional step and announced an update for the implementation of a whole Linux kernel to the operating system. But what does this mean? And most importantly, what does it mean for Windows users? Why Microsoft is adding a Linux kernel? Again, Linux isn't totally new on Windows. For a while now, Windows 10 has had what's called the Windows Subsystem for Linux, WSL. WSL focused on allowing Windows to run Linux tools such as Bash, but it didn't allow people to actually boot up a full-blown Linux GUI such as KDE, but it did give Windows users a way to run Linux tools without the need of a virtual machine. Now Microsoft is aiming to get a full kernel into Windows. This will call for a new version of the Windows Subsystem for Linux, predictably called WSL2. It's the first time that a Linux kernel has been put into Windows and marks the next advancement of Linux support within Windows. Which kernel is being used? Linux enthusiasts may be disappointed to hear that Windows isn't planning to use a currently existing kernel. They're making their own variant, which is then implemented into Windows. However, WSL2 won't come with its own user space. You can customize which one is installed in WSL2. This gives some freedom to customize your WSL2, even if it's not as much as some users may like. Is this a virtual machine for Linux? If you're looking to run a full Linux desktop on Windows, you'll be disappointed with this update. While you'll be able to run Linux in this update, it won't be like a virtual machine. However, if you want to run specific Linux tools within Windows itself, you'll probably find WSL2 a worthwhile addition. Is this a sign of Windows fighting Linux? When we last touched upon this topic, we asked the question if it was a sign that Windows was trying to eliminate Linux, or at least combat it. At the time it felt like Windows was taking a product Linux. Now, with this entire kernel custom made by Microsoft themselves, this feeling is stronger than ever. By implementing a kernel into Windows 10, Microsoft is probably hoping to stop people dual booting with Linux. Why swap between Windows and Linux when you can just do everything on WSL2? It's a convenient way for someone to use Linux tools within Windows without the need for a VM or dual boot. However, much like we said last time, this change is unlikely to convert any Linux users into Windows. Linux users have more of a problem with Windows 10 itself and are unlikely to install Windows 10 over their favourite distro. In fact, with the recent Windows update facade, Linux users are probably far and away from adopting Windows 10. With Windows 10 opening up to Linux, the next update will contain an entire custom-made kernel. While it's not a full-blown distro, it is a useful tool for running Linux tools in Windows, even if some Linux users feel as if Microsoft is trying to combat the OS. Do you think this is a case of Microsoft fighting off its competition? Or is this simply a convenient tool with no malcontent? Let us know in the comments below. Okay, as always, thanks for watching. That's all for now. See you next time.